Welcome back to Aging Answers, where we help seniors and their families with the challenges and opportunities of aging with confidence.
Today we're talking about one of the most important topics in the home safety. Most falls and injuries and even hospitalizations happen inside the home, but many of these accidents are preventable. So, I'm Mitch.
And I'm Fred.
And again, welcome to Aging Answers. So we're talking about home safety today, and this is something that probably isn't brought up as much as it should be, but it is always addressed in some manner when we're going into a home.
Well, nearly 1 in 4 adults over 65 falls each year, and falls are one of the leading injuries among seniors. But just small changes can really make a difference. And that's what we strive to do, is go in, educate people exactly what they can do to make their home a little safer.
Yeah. When we're going into the home, that's one of the first things that we usually do. We start looking around. We do a full home safety assessment. So maybe you could just talk about some of the things that we're looking for when we're going into the home. Some things that even you've had experience with when taking care of my grandparents.
The first thing is steps. Whether they're in good condition, poor condition, that makes a difference. The size of the steps, sometimes, the older homes had really tall steps before they were standard. Yeah. And that seems to be a problem. So we kind of start right there. We look and see if we can navigate a little better pathway into the home. And sometimes if it doesn't have railings, we recommend some railings even to help to get up into the home. Once inside, then it really opens up a lot of different places that we need to look at. The first thing when you first walk in, everyone usually has a rug. And those rugs are typically just these small throw rugs that are kind of flimsy, and that's a real tripping hazard. I understand everyone likes to have a rug there to wipe your feet off, but if you can find one that's a little flatter, a little more contoured to the floor rather than a fluffy mat, it's a lot better.
And one that actually will stick to the ground, rather than slide around.
Yeah. And from there, we can go to, let's look at pets. Everyone loves their pets, but, and pets love their owners, so typically they're going to come up, they're going to jump on you, and if you're not aware and you're not ready for it, as we age, we lose our balance, and that pet could actually trip you. Or maybe they just run underneath your feet. That happens a lot too.
Yeah, just like your dogs, they're always at your heel.
Yeah.
And that's such a risk for someone, that especially if your senses are diminished, you can't see, you can't hear as well. Your balance is off, and you have a little dog right at your heel. That could be a bad situation for someone.
Yeah, and if you have these little quiet, sneaky little dogs like I have, they tend to walk up behind me, and I don't even know they're there. A little trick to that sometimes is add a little bell. I used to do that with cats, but you just add a little bell, and it kind of makes sense that you always know where your pet is. Lighting is another thing. So as we age, we tend to not like the bright lights, and it's hard on our eyes. And same thing in the home. But that is really when we really need more light and a little whiter light. Yellow light is nice and soft on your eyes, but it makes everything shadowy, and it makes everything kind of dull looking. Yeah.
And that's what we typically tend to find in homes, is the dull yellow light that just doesn't light up the area well enough, and that can create problems with shadows and obstacles, not being able to see things on the floor. And I know of clients that we've had that have had issues with lighting in the home where they've actually had a fall because they just couldn't see.
Yeah, and those falls, broken hips, shoulders.
Head injuries.
Yeah, we see that a lot, and especially at night. A lot of this darkness. Everyone's kind of used to their home. They can get up if they need to use their bathroom at night. They can, but they tend to do it in the dark like they used to. It's not like that anymore. You need to have a little bit of light, even if it's automatic lights.
Yep.
A lot right now you have those sensors that you can put in when you walk into a room, and that's great for seniors. And that is not an expensive repair.
Yeah, it's a simple fix to put in, and it makes a big difference. You're talking about the light sensors that when you walk in, it detects you,
Yeah.
lights up, you do your business, and then you leave, and after a minute or two, it'll shut off.
Yeah, the motion sensors. With that, you kind of have a loss of independence, meaning that you kind of feel like you're scared to go to the bathroom, you're scared to get up. And then you have that fear of falling again. And, the head injuries are really tough on us as we age. So that just creates another hospital stay, and then we go back into rehabilitation again, and that cycle just repeats itself. So, like our agency, when we go in, this is the things that we look for. We know that if we can keep you safe at home, you're not going to repeat that cycle of getting injured back into the hospital, back into rehab, and we try to prevent that cycle. And if we can get in there early enough, that we usually have great success with that.
So let's just kind of jump back here to maybe common areas where falls occur. So, let's start with entryways. You have entryways leading up to your home. You got uneven sidewalks. You already talked about the poor lighting. Steps, whether they're in the home or outside, there could be loose steps, uneven steps. Again, you mentioned railing. Having appropriate amount of railing, either at least on one side or both sides, is preferable. But checking to make sure those are securely fastened. And then, if you're in Northeast Ohio like we are, ice and snow is always a concern for us, especially if someone can't get out to shovel the snow or throw ice melt down. That can be a major problem for a senior.
Let's just stop there and think about this. So you're a senior. You think, oh, I have to go out. I have to shovel the snow. I have to get ice melter out there. You have a lot of kids probably in your neighborhood or a professional company that would come and provide this service for you. And you think, well, it's so expensive. Well, which is more expensive? Is it, how about just one day in a hospital or a rehab center? How much does that cost you? That would pay for your entire winter of having someone come in to help clear your walkways and provide ice treatment. So, if we can get people to think a little different about how to take care of themselves, I think we can go a long way in keeping them at home.
So let's talk about your living room next. So some common tripping hazards in there could be rugs, but electrical cords. We see it all the time. We've got cords run all over the place, maybe for lamps or little devices. It could be potentially a phone charger of some sort. But a lot of times we'll see just cords run across the living room, and that's a big no-no for a senior.
Yeah, and that happens almost exclusively in every home that we go into. And especially in some older homes that had less receptacles, and they need electric, so they kind of run extension cords, and they don't really hide them under the rugs either. They kind of just lay them out over the top because they put them there. They think that they know where those are. And then it doesn't take long to get your foot entangled and down you go. So
And clutter is another thing that we find a lot. You know, things tend to accumulate at maybe coffee tables or end tables, and even on the floor. You know, boxes now. Amazon's real big, so everybody orders everything offline, has it delivered, and a lot of times we just see those boxes stacked up. It could be things for you know that maybe they just want for themselves, or it could even be medical supplies. A lot of times we just see those stacked around the house.
It starts as mail and on the tables, and we think, well, we're just going to set it over here. We'll look at that later. And then pretty soon, like you said, the package comes, and they got something new, and they said, well, I'm going to look at that later, and it goes on the floor, and then it just accumulates, and no one likes to throw anything away.
Yeah.
You know, we're still in the generation where things were tough to come by, and we don't like to throw anything away.
Yeah, and furniture just in general can be a big clutter. Just the way it's arranged, you know, clear pathways is something that we strive to achieve when we're going in a home, especially if there's additional clutter beyond that.
You know, and there's companies out there as well that we're affiliated with, not financially or anything like that, but we know their businesses, and they come in and they'll actually declutter your home, which is kind of a new modern way of saying, let's get rid of the junk. And that really helps a lot. And if you really sit down and think about it, what is there, what's not there, what you need, and you'll probably say, get rid of it, get rid of it, get rid of it. And your kids will be really thankful. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah.
Because you're probably not going to let your children get rid of anything. And so when an independent company comes in and says, hey, let's get rid of this, get it straightened up. And for our company, once you have that there, that's great. We can keep it there. It helps us maintain your residence, keeps it clean and organized. So that is something to think about.
So let's talk about kitchens. You know, safety hazards in the kitchen. I know we've already hit on lighting. Something I think is overlooked is cabinets. You know, how high the cabinets are. You know, especially if you have a senior that thinks they need to get on a stool, which is another no-no. You know, trying to reach up something high. So something that we really encourage is to keep items that are frequently used at the lower level of the cabinet as much as possible.
Yeah, some of that we like to reorganize. And when we come in, we know that things that you're rarely or very seldom going to use, we like to get up on top. And if you ever need it, we can always help get it down.
Yeah.
Everything on the lower shelves is something that you would use maybe every day or weekly. And you know, and the sharp countertops is another thing. It's what you have, so we're going to live with it and work with it. But you know, that's why we want to keep everything kind of clear on that floor. So if you do have a trip, you do hit your head, that you're not hitting it on the corners, which is very serious.
Yeah. Then you have your knobs on your stove. You know, especially if you have a senior who has some kind of cognitive decline. You know, you definitely want to take those knobs off the burners. Kind of get those out of sight, out of mind. So there's no thought that, hey, I need to cook something. They turn on the burner, and I mean that's just a fire hazard in itself.
Yeah, and that's whether it's electric or gas. Either one, and gas can be a particular hazard just because maybe they think they're going to light the stove, maybe you're going to heat some water, and not actually, it doesn't actually get lit, and we have now gas coming into the house. So if we're to that stage, we recommend just taking the knobs off, storing them somewhere in case someone else is there and needs to cook. We can just put it right back on and use the stove.
And how about on faucets? Whether it's in the kitchen or the bathroom, making sure they're labeled.
Yeah, the hot and the cold is definitely, because there's some confusion there. And, you know, even if we have to put some notes up there, sticky pads or whatever, just hot or cold, that really helps. The other thing is the availability of now the new knobs, the new hardware that can go on makes it much easier, especially if you have seniors with arthritis. That's in particular, that's really hard to turn the knobs. Now they have knobs that's so easy to turn back and forth. And even in the kitchen, of course, you have your touchless or your
Faucets.
touchless faucets, or even the touch ones. Either one, that makes it a lot easier. So just a little bit of money spent in the home can do these upgrades to keep you out of trouble. And trouble by that I mean back in the hospital.
Yeah. So real quick, we can just touch on the last two areas of the home where we see safety as very important. One, the next one being the bedroom, making sure that the bed isn't too high or too low, because we spend most of our time throughout the day in the bed. I guess maybe half your day or not quite. But what's that look like if a bed is too high or too low?
Well, the too high is definitely a problem, because you try to tend to lift up on one leg to get your hip up on there and try to get into bed. And coming out's the same thing. You're trying to get down. You have 1 foot on the floor, maybe 1 foot in the bed. A lot of people will still wear some type of socks or slippers. Maybe they just jump into bed because they're up and down so much. And that on a carpeted floor can create a hazard too, because once your foot hits the floor, you tend to slide off and down you go again.
So what would you recommend?
A rail. I mean, and they have those inexpensive ones that can just go underneath the mattress, something to grab a hold of when you're getting in or getting out. That can provide, even if you slip and you still have something to hold to, you're not going to get down and hit the ground as hard, or maybe even an end table or something like that, or a dresser. That's where we're trying to keep you away from.
Yeah. And then you talked about slippers and socks. I mean, do we recommend that someone would wear socks with grippers on them, or?
Yeah, I think so. Another thing of aging is we tend to shuffle, and that's just because we're not using our leg muscles as much as we used to. So we don't lift our legs as high, which eventually kind of turns into that shuffle. And that shuffle, depending on your floor, it could be slippery, especially on maybe a hardwood floor. That maybe is the time to look at something with a little bit of grip to it, so that you're not sliding around.
Okay, that's makes sense.
Yeah, there's just so many different avenues that we can travel. And that's kind of why we do our safety assessments when we start out. We like to come in, see what we're dealing with, and we try to prevent those falls. Inside, if you have a walker or a cane that you're using, we want to make sure we have that clear pathway from going to the bedroom, to the bathroom, to the kitchen, to your living room. That really make a big difference in your quality of life.
So let's talk next about the bathroom, which is probably the most dangerous area of the home for a senior. So tell us a little bit about some of the hazards that we typically find in the bathroom area.
There's a lot. Okay, let's go with the number one. You need the grab rails. You need something, handrails to hold on to. And that may be just walking in. Maybe you have a change of floor level, and that change of floor level could be a trip hazard as well.
Yeah, and we recommend highlighting that somehow. Anytime there's a change in elevation, making sure that's clearly visible. We've seen people just use caution tape of some sort.
Yeah.
I know that you can buy a yellow or orange tape that just goes down, sticks right to the floor.
Yeah, and these aren't permanent improvements, but they'll work great.
Yeah.
It's just going to make your mind alert that, hey, something's different there. The other thing is, water on the floor, and that could potentially be very slippery. So having these grab rails either right at your sink maybe, or definitely by the bathtub or by the shower.
And by the toilet.
By the commode, yeah. And there's all kinds of attachments that we can use for that. And if we're using a walker to get in, or maybe even a wheelchair, typically in a house, if you can switch to some type of a transport chair, that's a little bit better for maneuvering once you get inside there. And then we want to make sure we have railings in the right place in order to grab a hold of to be able to either sit down or stand up.
Now, what would you recommend as far as the commode? You know, I know we have grab bars, we recommend grab bars, but a lot of commodes that we see in older homes are very low to the ground. So what would you suggest to the listeners as far as an improvement for their commode?
So probably the most inexpensive rather, way is to use what they call a riser. It just goes on the top of the commode, and it kind of raises it up, maybe 4 inches, 5, 6. There's variations to that, and what that does is just provide an easier height for you to sit on, and it actually helps you when you go to get up because you're actually higher. They make extremely high commodes right now, which if you want to take that plunge and just replace it, you can do that as well. Yeah. And then they have the railings on both sides where you can get help and that
stabilize.
Yeah, and those are adjustable. You can use those. Those are pretty simple fix. The bathtub, when we get to that, let's open this subject up because this is where a lot of problems happen. And if you've been one of those people that you've used your bathtub your entire life, that's kind of where you want to get to. And there's different variations that we can help with there. There's a seat that goes inside the tub and outside. So typically you would go in, you would sit down, you'd be able to lift your leg up, put one leg in the shower or in the tub, slide over and get all the way in. And then if you wanted to, you could just shower. You can just bring the shower nozzle down and shower yourself. Standing up and sitting down in a tub is pretty tough for anyone. And we'd like to see you probably just use a hand shower and let that water still just run over you to help clean you off. The other thing is those grab bars getting in and out. Yeah. And if you're going to shower, again, those grab bars and the placement of them is very important. And security. So a lot of people see the suction cup type of holders.
They're okay in certain circumstances.
And we don't really prefer those. We'd rather have them go into the wall and be anchored securely.
And let's not forget a nice mat in the bath or the shower to help prevent slipping. That's something I think is overlooked. Yeah.
Along with the shower comes the fear of showering. Yeah. So you may have had an accident in there where you slipped and fell. Now you're weary of going in. We don't really want to do it, so then we don't shower as often. That creates a whole different problem for seniors. And we know that we have to shower and do it on a regular basis. We have to keep the bacteria off of us, especially if we're having any type of accidents. We like to keep very clean to keep UTI infections from reoccurring and things like that.
Yeah, those are all great points. I think if someone needed more information or someone would just like a home safety assessment, that's something that we do free of charge. We just like to come out. We can go through the whole home and just make sure everything is up to par, and we can make recommendations as far as what we would like to see or what should be removed.
Yeah, and this is part of still living at home and living your life at home, which is for our company, which is our goal. So we're very particular of how we do things and what we recommend. We've We have a lot of experience in knowledge of how to do this. And so if someone would like to contact us, you're more than welcome to. Of course, you can always call us, even if it's just for tips. We do that on a daily basis.
And if someone was needing help, finding a contractor for, let's say, to install grab bars, we've got several affiliates that we would highly recommend that can come in. They know what they're doing, where to put things in the right manner. And
yeah. So our referral partners is really helps us succeed, because we know what our seniors need, and so when we refer out, we want to make sure our referral sources are on point with helping to get finished in the home what needs to be done.
And we're going to have another segment where we'll have just some of our referral partners coming in, explaining what they do and how they can help in the home, specifically tailored to seniors.
Yeah, and I want to say one more thing about showers. Those need to be, now when you put in new shower heads, we have an adjustment to limit the temperature.
Yeah.
And in particular, if you have a senior that's maybe a little confused, they reach down, they think, oh, my water's too cold, so I'm going to turn up the heat. And it could be just the opposite or vice versa. And that happens a lot too. And you could end up getting burned, especially if you don't have a limiter on there to what that temperature.
Or if they had neuropathy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We've seen cancer patients with neuropathy actually get burned because they just don't have that sensation.
Yeah, and the dementia as well. Typically we find that dementia, our clients, they feel a stinging sensation as soon as they get in there, no matter what the water temperature is. So a tip, we always start feeling the water, make sure it's the right temperature. And then we want to explain to them, hey, we're going to give you a shower now, so you're going to start to feel some water, and we tend to start at their feet so they get a little bit better feeling of it rather than just trying to put it on their body or on their back, because it kind of shocks them, scares them, and so if we start there and get them used to it, then it's more enjoyable.
So let's talk about medication safety, which is often overlooked. Most people don't realize that medications can contribute to falls. So let's talk a little bit about that, and what we can look for, how we can help.
The medication is such a real problem.
It's a beast in the home.
Yeah, it's really tough because sometimes seniors take too much, or they're not taking enough. They either forget to take it, which is almost probably as bad as taking too much. And that for us is when we go in to help a client, our medication reminders are pretty much on target, because we have a plan of how we're going to direct the client to take the medications with a time of day. And that makes it a little easier. But if they're there on the off days, maybe that we're not there, it becomes a little bit more difficult. Did I take my medicine this morning? Or no, I don't think I did. I better take it again just in case. And sometimes those paths lead people often to the emergency room.
Yeah.
So
something like dizziness could be a side effect of taking too much or not enough of their medication, or sleep medications. We've seen this come into play many times, taking a sleeping pill or too much of a sleeping pill, and then we have a fall because they wake up to use the restroom and they're dizzy, they're disoriented. We've seen it with you, even taking your sleeping pills at night.
Yeah.
You wake up and you're just kind of in a daze.
Yeah, if you're taking those, and especially at the wrong time of day, wrong time of night, that could be a real hazard. So how do we do this? How do we label them? Of course, we don't get into separating pills or taking pills out of pill bottles in our line of work, but we do direct the client when it's time to take the pills. And so pill organizers, the saving grace.
Pill minders.
Yeah. And so maybe family members are doing that, or maybe it could be even hospice nurses will do that. But most generally, we like to see the family, whoever's directly in charge with that, they can come in and separate them and get them on a targeted time to take their medication.
Even the pill minder boxes can be problematic too.
Yeah.
It's if they're not packaged correctly, if they're not put in the right days, the right amount, or we've seen where families come in and say, okay, well, mom took her medication on Monday and Tuesday. She still has Wednesday through Sunday to go, but I'm just going to put new pills in on Monday and Tuesday. And so that can be confusing for a senior, because now they're thinking, okay, well, I thought I took my medication on Tuesday, but now there's new pills in here. So where am I at? What am I supposed to do?
Yeah, so multiple pill boxes, and we say, okay, if you're going to do this, go ahead and refill the pill boxes. Put those away. Put those someplace, maybe up above in a tall cabinet that no one else is going to get them. And when you finished out this week's pills, it's empty. It's done. No more confusion. Bring out the new one, and we start a new week over.
And something else that I really like that the VA, the Veterans Administration, provides is the automatic pill dispensers with alarms on them. I think that's great, especially if family's not around to help. Those pill reminder alarms they're automatic dispensers. They pop out the pills at the right time, the right day, the right time, and then they have an alarm clock basically that reminding the senior that, hey, it's time to take your stuff.
Sometimes the seniors may end up calling the family and saying, I hear an alarm going off.
Yeah.
And that's a good way of saying, hey, it's time to take your medication. So that's a really great idea. And the blood pressure medications we know is in particular a tough one too, because either taking too many or maybe even the physician has changed the prescription, and that really gets confusing for seniors. So whoever's in charge of that, we encourage them to contact your doctor's office. If you know your family member's going there, maybe just doing a little follow-up, just checking, hey, did we change any medications? Or normally they give you a printout now of what happened at your visit, and make sure you review those to see if they've actually changed something. And at least you'll be in the know.
How about alcohol?
Oh boy.
Alcohol and medication interactions.
How do you tell your mom or dad, hey, no more wine, no more vodka, no more whatever? They may go out to eat, they may have a drink or two, and we can't do everything to prevent them. But maybe there's a problem, or maybe we need to kind of limit that a little bit. And then coming home and taking medications on top of it is never a good idea.
So let's jump into vision and hearing next, and how that really affects seniors in the home as well.
Well, as I've had cataracts removed, I can attest that bright lights seem to bother me too. I can remember my mom having her cataracts removed, but then afterwards she always wore these sunglasses, and I never quite understood, why are you wearing sunglasses? So I don't know if it makes your vision that much clearer, that maybe the whiter lights bother me a little bit, but I know that it does a little bit. But the vision, especially in the home, you combine that with dark lighting, is really a problem. And that's where we get into the problem of tripping, cords, rugs, not seeing them. And so the vision we need to keep up on, or maybe it's just a new prescription. And when you get a new prescription of your eyeglasses, maybe it's time that you donate the old ones to get them out of the house so that we're not combining. And oh, here's my glasses, here's my glasses. You don't know which one's the old and which ones are new.
You know, since you've admitted to the listeners that you're a senior citizen yourself,
If I didn't say senior citizen, I am aging.
just shy of 70.
Yeah.
So, you know, the vision. Would you like to share your experience of your ladder fall and how your vision affected you there?
Yeah, I'll give a brief story. We had a vacation home that we used, and I wanted to get up on the roof to see if the birds had changed our satellite dish. And so it's just a deck, and I just leaned the ladder up on the gutter. It's not a very tall ceiling, maybe 7-8 feet from the deck up to the roof. And as I went to step across, the ladder started sliding on the deck, and down I go. I fell onto the grill. Of course, I had the grill underneath me, and I fell onto the grill, got my leg caught in the ladder, and ended up going to the hospital. And the local hospital there said, we're not sure that we can treat you here, so we're going to transfer you. And in comes a helicopter, and off to the trauma center I went. And so at the trauma center, they said, what happened? How did you do this? And when I said ladder, they about flipped out. They said ladders are the number one problem of falls in the United States. And with that comes, I guess, some your balance, your dizziness, your whatever. So that's how I landed myself in the hospital for a few days and being on a ladder. So I know that ladders are not good. Over 50 years old, as they said, it's the cutoff.
Because your depth perception has changed at 50.
Yeah, there's a lot of little things that change from your eyesight, and it just keeps going. So, but thanks for bringing that up. I'm glad to share with everyone.
You know, we're talking about real life experiences here, so I just wanted that to be for the record.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that.
How about hearing? You know, how is hearing going to affect?
And that's another thing that goes that we don't even really know until we find out our spouse or significant other is saying, "Can you turn that down?" Because maybe it's the TV; it's too loud.
What?
Yeah, there you go. So we constantly go around with that. In fact, we share an office actually with a hearing
audio hearing.
Yeah, and they provide a hearing aid. So we see those coming in and out of the offices as well. But there's a lot of help that can be available to you, especially like if you're a veteran. The VA will provide you some hearing aids. And there's a lot of alternatives to different hearing aids, I understand. I have not reached that yet, I don't think. But I'm sure you'll let me know when I do.
I will. And how about, going back to vision, how important it is to have annual eye exams, even updating eyeglass prescriptions.
Yeah, there's some diseases that, you could have glaucoma. So I guess, you need to keep up on that as we age. And especially we know that driving is gonna be a problem at some point in time. We have to look into that little thing and see which side the light's coming on. And we've had a lot of our seniors tell us that they couldn't pass it because they couldn't see these lights in the side. And so keep up on your eye test, keep up on your hearing test. When your spouse calls you, you want to be able to hear.
Or do you?
Or do you?
All right, let's talk about fire and emergency safety. And this is something we usually hit on at the end of our conversation with clients, just because it could involve caregiver access or what would happen in the case of an emergency if someone wasn't there with the senior. For the fire side of things, smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, I mean, how important are those in the home?
Well, I think we all know smoke detectors are lifesavers. Batteries, what good is smoke detectors if we don't change the battery? And, again, the time change, right now we're still on time changes, and that's the ideal time to change these is a memory. It kind of jogs you a little bit. You can say, hey, it's time to change these batteries, or even test them. So, you definitely want to keep testing these smoke detectors. Along with the smoke detector is fire extinguishers. You can do your relatives or whoever is living alone or even with someone of having fire extinguishers.
Where would you recommend those being placed?
Well, a lot of people don't like them, so they put them in the closet, which makes no sense at all.
Yeah.
Honestly, I would have one in several places. A garage would be one. A kitchen, in particular, is the best place. And make sure you're getting the right kind of fire extinguishers. And most people, when they go into even wherever a hardware store,
Big box store.
yeah, they'll tell you, and they can help you through the process. But fire extinguishers are very important. Even if you had a senior that would call you and say, hey, I've got a pan on fire and I don't know what to do. If you know where that fire extinguisher is, you can tell them and explain to them, help them along, at least to get to be able to use the fire extinguisher.
So, worst case scenario, a fire. What's the importance of having an emergency exit plan?
Well, we get back to the clutter. What good is it to have an emergency plan? How you're going to get out? Just a refresher to explain maybe your parents or relatives, hey, if there's a fire, here's where you want to get out. And having these door handles, that's the other thing. These door handles, these round knobs are really tough for people that have maybe arthritis or don't have the strength. The levers are really easy. They're not expensive. Put them on. It'll really help a senior be able to get out through the door.
That's something I wouldn't have even thought about.
And so that's one thing. The 911, either are you wearing a pendant or a bracelet or whatever. Those are almost instantaneous too.
They detect falls. If they have the push button, you can call for emergency help right away.
Right, and they can do that quicker than they can dial your phone number.
And there's even AI now.
Yeah.
AI sensors that can go in the home.
Yeah, and we'll talk about AI a little bit, and because that is probably going to be our next level of care in homes eventually. They do have some programs out there that started, but I can see in the future it's going to be a huge advantage for us. But the exit plan, again, keeping those pathways open, no matter whether it's in the bedroom, out to a door, or a kitchen. You don't want your furniture in front of them. You have to be able to get around, especially in an emergency.
How about door access? If there was a fire and you couldn't get out, I know the fire department's going to come in. They're going to break down the door. What do you recommend on that level?
There's a couple different.
Or maybe not even a fire, maybe just a fall.
Yeah. So what happens? So you've tried to do everything. You gave them the pennant. You gave them the phone. And how come you didn't? Why didn't you call me? Well, I left my phone in the other room. Or what? Maybe they don't take their phone into the shower and they fall there, and they've broken a hip. They can't even get out of that room. So, the pennant is good for that, because you can wear it right in the shower with you. If you have a fall, you hit the button. So what happens when that alarm goes off, the 911? We like to recommend the little digital pad.
Digital keypad.
Yeah. And give the access code to your fire department or your police department. If you have a 911 call that goes into them, they have a code. They can unlock your box and get in, get the key out. It may have been just a simple fall and you can't get up from that. And you just need some assistance getting up. Well, when the fire department or the police department come, it's an emergency. You're not answering the door. They're going to come in to find out where you're at and how you need help.
And that's going to be a very expensive door repair.
Yeah, because they're going to come right through the door. And so we find that these little keypads they're inexpensive. They're simple to install. Almost just a screwdriver pretty much is going to install these, and you're going to have one key. And maybe it's for a neighbor. Maybe you don't want to really give the key to the neighbor, but you could go ahead and give an access code to somebody, or at least you would have access to getting into the home, and that's really going to be a help for you.
Yeah.
The other thing with the phones, smartphones are a little tougher for aged people. So there's so many things.
You don't tell me.
Well, I've never really asked for any type of help with my phone, but
Sounds like you've had a little personal experience though. So.
Well, I have been around the block. So on phones, maybe it's a little easier, just the big push buttons on it, and you don't need the contact list to hold 2,000 people. Maybe it's just a little bit more simplified. So don't get too tough on your parents when they can't understand the whole phone deal. The cell phones are great access, or great help for us if we know how to use them. But if we don't, they sometimes can lead to a little bit of a delay. The old pickup phone, dial 911 may help too. So there's a couple different ways. We always recommend still having the cell phone, because maybe they're out driving, they get lost. And that can happen too. You know where they're at. Inside the home, then we get on to maybe some dementia type situations where maybe they're going out in the middle of the night. Maybe you have a husband and wife, and it's called wandering, and we get our days and nights mixed up a little bit. And we may just decide we want to go out and sit on the porch, but you don't want someone with memory issues to be out wandering in the middle of the night. And how do we stop that? You don't want to lock them in, so maybe little door alarms are good ideas. What do you think?
Yeah, so I know we've seen several times where we've had family members complaining, how do we prevent someone from wandering, especially out at night? The door alarms are okay. In my opinion, they might scare a senior too much, which would be problematic to startle them. Well, we've hit on a lot of topics for home safety. There's a lot of great information out there, and we just wanted to let everyone know that these are things that we can come in and do. We can help do these safety assessments, give you ideas, give you tips and tricks. But we're also going to have a link to our home safety assessment through our blog on our website, and I believe through one of our social media platforms. The link will be available. It's just our standard home safety assessment that anyone can perform at home on their, for their parents themselves. Not necessarily have to have us come in, but and I know there's other companies out there that specifically just do home safety assessments as well. So we're going to have a link to that in our blog, our website, our social media. we encourage everyone to check it out, implement what you can. There's certain things that you need to do right now, and there's some things that maybe can wait. And most of the options that are out there are relatively inexpensive. Simple home upgrades such as lighting or changing doorknobs. There's a lot of things that can be done to maximize safety without breaking the bank.
We talk a little bit about through different aspects of how to pay for home care. And, some of these things is going to be something that's going to be needed. You're going to have to spend a little bit of money. For our agency, we tend to look at, hey, what can we do for the least amount of money and get the most benefit out of? We know that as we age, and we're aging a lot longer now. And so we need to stretch our dollars to go that extra mile now. So we kind of look at things, hey, how can we do it, make it happen, make it efficient, and without being real expensive? So, and throughout our whole team of our whole company, that's what we're always looking for, that inexpensive, that next method to get help for our seniors.
And for anybody that missed our last episode was specifically on finance and what options there are for home care and how to pay for it. So if you'd like to go back and look at that, we welcome you to do that. If you've got questions on any previous episodes, feel free to email us, call us. We'd be more than happy to speak with anyone who's got some questions or needs answers. Please like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. We're new at this, so bear with us as we get a little bit better. And again, I'm Mitch.
And I'm Fred.
And thanks for joining Aging Answers.
Thank you.